This week on Full Credit to the Noise, George Russell fights off the tears, while Kimi Antonelli drinks all the beers, and the future of supercars comes with fears. Welcome to Full Credit to the Noise. Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Full Credit to the Noise. You can find this podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at FCTTN Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook at former_legend. You can find the bloke across me on Twitter at AVL_motorsport. He's on Instagram at AVL.motorsport. He's a man who this week was photographed swimming with Gina Reinhardt in the Greek Isles. He's been revealed as a judge on this season's series of The Block, and tonight he's wearing his Lycra riding outfit. Welcome to Speak Cafe's Andrew Van Leeuwen.
Thank you, Former. You know us West Aussies do stick together, so I guess it's no surprise I'd be holidaying with Gina. If you had to see me or Gina in a Lycra riding outfit, which way are you going on that one, do you reckon?
Nothing personal with Arnie Gina.
That's fair enough.
Only because I think she might come with benefits, so...
fair enough. I won't be offended by that.
Yeah. Mate, I mean, what happened this week? You know how much I love Spa. This is what breaks my heart. And the Belgian GP from Spa this year highlighted what is wrong with these cars in no uncertain terms. And if you thought that was a good race last night, you are hiding from the fact that it is absolutely fake. It's fake racing.
I guess I don't. You're not wrong about that, and I did actually flag on the news pod last week that I thought this was going to be a tough watch, given the fact that it is such an iconic venue and it's a place where Formula One cars are really at their...
It's like catching your parents making love. It's very tough to watch.
I actually, for what was always going to be a nailed-on one-stop race, I actually thought it was a more interesting race than it could have been, and everyone who has listened to any podcast in this podcast feed will know that I hate the idea of VSCs. They did kind of spice the race up a little bit in terms of at least putting Charles Leclerc out front for a little while, but the inevitability that Kimi was going to run them down. Some of the race, I guess it is fake. Some of the racing was kind of interesting. I guess, I guess the biggest issue is that you look at like the move that Oscar Piastri put on Lewis Hamilton, was it, into Eau Rouge there? That was absolutely brilliant. But then you're still tinged with this kind of was it brilliant?
Exactly,
or was it just,
right.
And I guess that's kind of the point we're at now where the trust is just so low on what we're looking at and whether it's real and whether we should be enjoying it, which I can still compartmentalize it enough and look at it and go, I reckon that was actually pretty cool. And like I say, there was probably a bit more intrigue to the race than we might have otherwise seen. But yeah, it's certainly even the fact that, and we all know that we don't have a great band of hall monitor supporters amongst our listenership, but even the fact that you sort of feel like there must be something going on there. Like he's not that bad, that he's that far off a bloke in his second year, driving these race cars. So you kind of feel even a little robbed that we're not at least seeing a battle between two drivers in the same team going for the championship like we did last year, because there's obviously just this weirdness going on that even the team itself can't seem to explain. Yeah,
I mean, like you said, when you watch Max head out of Eau Rouge in front, and by the end of the straight, 3 cars have gone past him.
Yeah.
And his car looked like it was short 2 gears by the time it got to the end of that straight. It was just flat and going nowhere. And that, to me, in itself, I was like, Jesus, I hate this. This is just shite. He put on a gun move. Maybe he put on a gun move because he used all his power to get the car off the line. I don't know. But
well, clearly he did. Clearly he just burned all his credits heading down, into Eau Rouge. And up out of Radion there, and then just got absolutely swamped. And then you had George, who just had absolutely nothing going on at all. So yeah, it was definitely, it was always going to be a tough one for these regulations. And obviously when you're taking these regulations to sacred sites like Spa-Francorchamps, it just grates that little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the other thing too, is that circuit is now going to go every second year. And if I know it doesn't have anything, the racing last night didn't have anything to do with that decision, but geez, imagine making that decision based off what we've seen. You know, just because that sort of flat stick, balls out sort of track doesn't go hand in hand with this type of racing is extremely disappointing. God knows what's going to happen at Monza.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least if they do happen to if the FIA can get the new V8 regs up by 2030, we might only have to watch one more Spa with these regulations. There might only be 2028. And then we'll be back in 2030.
The year that it rained and we got like a one-lap Grand Prix, I would have taken that last night because if we could have gone back in time and had a proper race that day, because those cars at least gave you something. But these cars, just to me, And the other thing too, as a viewer, you see cars get overtaken and you go, okay, so do you have power now to go back past? And you don't know. You're just sitting there waiting for the next half lap to see whether they've got something to answer it. So a pass isn't really confirmed until probably you're 2Ks down the road.
Yeah. Well, even when Lando went past Oscar at that point, when Oscar was nursing the damage from the Leclerc contact, and I'm sure we'll get onto that, but you kind of went, oh, okay, well, his car's wounded. There's nothing he can do. Like, there's been a change of position. And then suddenly he's just passing him back. And it's like, okay, well, what on earth is actually going on here?
Do you reckon Oscar's not copping any papaya rules this year? I mean, not that it's got to that point yet.
Doesn't matter.
It probably doesn't matter. You're right.
Now.
Yeah. Well, we started with qualifying, and Kimi Antonelli just maintained that Mercedes' perfect pole position streak in 26 with a stunning late lap to snatch top spot from Max Verstappen, who used the toe from Isaac Hadjar to absolute perfection. At one stage, I don't know if you noticed, but in that lap, I thought he was going to run up the backside of Hadjar.
Yeah.
He was that close to him. George Russell was fourth for Mercedes, but he was elevated to third after Lando Norris copped a 10-place penalty for an engine change. He was in third at one stage. Oscar Piastri could only manage seventh. So we went to the race. Antonelli just went back to the top step of the podium. Like you said, he did have to fight for it because at one stage there, because of a virtual safety car, Charles got in front. But he got back in front. He claimed his sixth victory of the season, which is unbelievable. He was set for a comfortable win, like I said, before that VSC came about. But he basically got past Ferrari and Leclerc's Ferrari, I should say, got the lead and crossed the line 1.9 seconds in front. That's the other thing too, AVL. I thought he'd then just go away from it, but at no stage did he look entirely comfortable from Leclerc. Did you, or was he just managing it, do you reckon?
No, I actually think that was a pretty impressive drive from Charles, to be honest, to kind of hang in there. Because it did feel like that was the inevitability that Kimi would get past and just sort of streak away, and he didn't do that. And I really think that Charles drove a really good race like that. I think that was maximising what there was there with that package to end up second in that race and to end up, keeping the pressure on Kimi. And I guess there's probably a strategic element to that because we have seen Kimi make mistakes. Think back as recently as the Austrian Grand Prix in the early stages of that race where he was running wide everywhere. We know he has issues with track limits. He was kind of flirting with track limits again last night. He is capable of making a mistake. He is a teenager in his second year of Formula One racing, fighting for a world championship. That's a lot of pressure for someone that young to be dealing with. So I think that was a smart tactic from Charles to say, well, let's just keep the pressure on this guy and kind of see what happens. But we are seeing this rapid development of Kimi Antonelli as a race car driver. And I think we saw a lot of that last night. Like that was one of his most complete drives in the way that whatever adversity was kind of thrown at him during the race, he just recovered from it and got the job done. And, I think, again, I'm sure we're going to get onto the George Russell situation, the fact that he obviously didn't have a lot of pace. He's struggling with some sort of issue, and then he ends up in the sand trap. But Kimi deserved to get those points back. That was deserved. But he just did such a good job to manage the race from that point on and just sort of there's just this growing maturity about the way he goes about the business. And obviously he does have a super fast car. He does seem to be able to understand and extract the best out of this regulation of car in a way no one else does. But yeah, there's just, you can see his development as an athlete happening sort of in front of us. And I think last night was a massive example of that.
Yeah, so now he sits 45 points in front of Lewis Hamilton and 50 in front of George. Like you said, George and Lewis came together on lap 1. George parked it in the sand, got out, and was filthy. More on the battery than he was on what happened with Lewis. He actually wanted to put that down as a racing incident, which was interesting. But after the race, he wanted to talk about the issues he was having with his battery in his car. He claimed he came out of turn 1 with no power and was going slower than an F2 up the straight. And like you say, I'd love to kick him while he's down, let's be honest.
Nah, something's going on. Something is definitely going on there, and it seems the team doesn't have a full understanding of it, and I just don't fully believe that it is completely driver based. Like, obviously the way you drive, these cars are so sensitive given the fact they basically run to an algorithm that you do really have to get it right the way you drive them, but they're so power limited through so many parts of the circuit that it's not beyond someone who's won a bunch of Grand Prix like George Russell to be able to drive them at that level. And it's impossible to think that someone with as limited experience as Kimi Antonelli just gets it so much better than he. There's obviously something going on. I do think Kimi is an exceptional talent. I can fully believe that his ceiling might be higher than George's. I can fully believe that he has a better handle on how to get the best out of these cars than George can. But I don't believe when you're talking about half a second gap in qualifying or whatever, like that's a lot. So, you know, I do think there's something going on there, and it's just astonishing that the team doesn't seem to fully understand what it is. Like no one seems to be able to say, well, it's this or this. They're talking about, well, maybe it's part, you know, is there a battery issue? Is it a deployment issue? Is there a technical issue? Is it half that and half driver or whatever? There's just no clear answer, which is very unusual for an F1 team, given the sheer spectrum of data that they have at their availability to work this stuff out. So I do think there's something going on, whether it's been going on all season or not. This is nothing that detracts from the job that Kimi's doing. Like, what an exceptional job that he's doing. Yeah. But I think this weekend was the weekend where even George's greatest detractors have to go, yeah, okay, there's like something not quite right here. I do want to talk about the clash with Lewis Hamilton, because that's an officialing decision that I just can't, you know, like, we're recording this 24 hours later and I still just can't get my head around. Like,
no, I'm fine with it. I know this is contrary to popular opinion.
You think that was a 5-second penalty?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Nah, I don't get. I don't get it. I think that particularly if you look at the sort of overhead shot, like, remember, like, George had clearly been swamped up the straight. He didn't go into that corner next to Lewis Hamilton. He was next to Oscar Piastri as they went into the braking zone of that corner, and he has, out of clear and understandable frustration, gone massively late on the brakes to get.
But are you saying he wouldn't have made the corner?
I'm saying that when you put yourself next to somebody who is also clearly going to be grip limited with lower tyre temperatures and a whole bunch of interrupted airflow on the first lap of a race in pack racing on a corner that he's effectively on the outside for the first part of the corner and then going to be on the inside. If you put yourself into that position, you are taking on risk. And I find it astounding that Pedro Lamy, and as the driver steward, didn't look at that and say, well, he's put himself in an immense amount of risk here. I don't think George should have been penalised for it either.
No, not at all.
I'm not saying it should have gone. I'm not saying it should have gone that way, but he just took on so much risk to put himself in that position, and he paid the price for it. And the fact that he straight away said, "Hey, that was a racing incident." Like, the way racing car drivers work is like this, right? So if they say it's a racing incident, it was anything from a racing incident to 100% their fault. If they say it was the other driver's fault, it's anything from a racing incident to
the other bloke's fault.
The other bloke's fault. Like, anywhere from that band. So to sort of, for him to say that, like, I don't think he felt Lewis was at fault at all, and I didn't either. Like, that is just a risk that you take if you go, right, I'm going to come from a car length back, brake that much later than this car, dive into this corner on what is effectively the outside that's going to become the inside. You're just taking on risk. Like, that's just what you're doing. And I really felt like he felt that. Like, he was taking on that risk because he felt he had to mitigate the ground he'd lost up the straight. And we know that George he loves blaming other people for stuff. So the fact that he was so quick to say, no, I don't think there's a penalty there. Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, if that's how you're going to, and I don't buy the whole, well, it was only a 5-second because of these mitigating factors. No, it wasn't a penalty.
The thing that got me was the onboard from Lewis. He goes understeer, oversteer, and hits George, right?
So what should Lewis have done differently? So should he have backed out?
Well, how do you stop understeer? How do you stop understeer? You go slow.
He's come into the corner with no one next to him, and this car's appeared because it's out because he's gone this massive late braking, like from nowhere. Like, I just look at it from Lewis' perspective. I'd be going, what did you want me to do? Like, yes, the moment I saw the car was there, I did everything I could not to hit him, but he was next to the guy behind me, not next to me. Like, he's come into that corner.
But he didn't just magically appear. He
kind of did because he braked very, very late, and that's fine. Like I say, I don't think he did anything wrong, but he deliberately chose to take the riskiest option and go for a gap that obviously the way the corner goes from being a right-hander to a left-hander was going to close up at some point. But when you look above on the camera above the two of them, there was room on both sides. Either of them could have done anything. Neither of them were crowding each other. They just ran into each other, which is what happens between cars.
Well,
in the
no, they
first
didn't
lap
run
of a
into
race.
each other. Lewis ran into George.
Well, was George definitely heading in the other direction? They were both on the same bit of track at the same time. I don't buy that Lewis ran into George. They ended up on the same bit of track at the same time. To me, it is just the epitome of a racing incident. And I hate seeing that stuff because that's what discourages people from going racing. Is when you can't even... I don't know what else Lewis really could have done. Like, he's in the corner. He's obviously got disturbed air. That needs to be factored in, and it was, but it needs to be factored in as this is not a penalty because, like, the guy's, like, fighting the car through the corner and someone's gone for a big move around the outside, put themselves at risk, and has copped a tap because of it. And that's why George was so calm about that aspect of it, because he knew full well that he'd put himself at risk and it had not paid off.
I've got something to say about the way he took it after the race. I think George really wanted to get out there because Toto has been saying it's not the car, it's not the car, and not the car. And today, George wanted to get out there in the press pen that it was the car. And so he was happy to write the incident off as a Lewis racing incident, right? That's fine because I really think he wanted to put the spotlight, the attention onto the battery and what's going on with his car because he doesn't feel like he's getting a fair suck of the sav. And that's why I think he was happy to write off as a racing incident. On a different day, in different times, I reckon he'd say Lewis should have held his line. He got snap understeer into snap oversteer, hit me, took me out. But I actually think he wanted to make the battery the centre of attention in that moment.
But a loss of grip is what happens on the first lap of a race, and if you're not accounting for that in the car that you're racing,
don't hit someone.
Then that's your fault. If you put yourself in a position where you go next to a car that's clearly going to be grip limited, then you just run that risk. That is just what you do.
So you're telling me if you're at Eastern Creek, turn 2, you're on the outside of someone and someone has chronic understeer and takes you out, it's your fault because you're on the outside of him.
If you are doing it on the first lap of a race in an aero class where you know the other car is tucked up under another car and will be grip limited and you put yourself in that position, you will definitely take it.
Can you show me the rules where that says that?
That is usually how it will be adjudged. Once you're on the outside, you are suddenly taking on the risk of being out there, and that comes with a potential price. And that is, I honestly believe that's why George wasn't upset about what Lewis had done, because I think he knew that he was frustrated. He went in that corner very late and very deep. He put himself into a hole that had every chance of evaporating slightly. He could have been further over to the left, and he said that. Yeah, I could have been over this way a little bit. He could have been over that way a little bit. There was heaps of room for both of them if you look at the camera view above. Heaps of room for both of them. It was a racing incident. That's what it was.
So under your interpretation of it, because it was lap 1, we're going to give a bit of leeway there. Is that correct?
100%. You definitely need
So can you show me in the rules where it says that?
Well, it doesn't have to say that in the rules.
No
The problem we
further questions,
have is the rules, and that is why Charles Leclerc didn't get penalised for running Oscar off the road, because technically Oscar wasn't far enough up because of the rules. So what we need to do is actually remove some of the regulation out of the rules about where you need to be and this and that, and apply common sense to it. And that's what that whole scenario lacked.
But this is the problem we're having in all sorts of sports, including soccer in the FIFA World Cup, rugby league and AFL, is that you bring the human element into it, and all of a sudden, show some allowance because it's the first lap becomes, well, it was the second lap. Well, it was the third lap. Look, mate, the rule is the rule is the rule, and Lewis had to cop it on the chin. If Lewis doesn't hit George is still going that race.
Yeah, and if George didn't drive into an incredibly risky situation, he wouldn't have got tipped into a spin. There's a reason why he wasn't upset with it, and I don't buy your theory on it. I think he knows that he took on a lot of risk and it didn't pay off, and that's why straight away he was saying, "Why am I in this?" He felt he had been pushed into a situation that he didn't want to be in because of another issue, and that's why he wasn't upset about it, and that's why I'm very surprised, that there was a decision taken to dish out a penalty for it. Because anyway,
we'll agree to disagree. Although we'll leave you with one question: who said this earlier this year? And I quote word for word: "I love this car and I love this engine."
I'm guessing George Russell.
George Russell, after winning the season opening Australian Grand Prix. So when things are going well, George is pretty cool with everything and likes it, And when everyone else couldn't get their head around what was going on earlier this year, Mercedes were the first ones to say, well, just go and fix your car. I don't think George has a leg to stand on as far as sympathy is concerned, I'm not going to lie. As much as I do think there is something weird going on, but also I think these cars are so intricate in the way you drive them and the way you reaccumulate battery power that some apparently variance in the degree of acceleration can change how much you regenerate power. So I don't know that this is actually motor racing anymore, to be fair. I think this is like a science fair for nerds.
No, that's very fair. Yeah.
All right. While we're there, like you said, for the second race in a row, Oscar Piastri had to drive most of the Grand Prix with a damaged front wing after chunks of carbon fibre went flying after a skirmish with Charles Leclerc on lap 8. Leclerc, surprisingly, though, wasn't penalised for the incident, which had many people scratching their heads. The stewards claimed Oscar wasn't up far enough and was never making the pass. That's also, I think, on this side of it, I don't think that's correct. And this isn't an Aussie thing or whatever. But again, Charles did not leave him room. And that is still... He still has to do that. He has to leave a car width, right?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't think either deserved a penalty, really. But I certainly think if one of them did, it's that one. Like, if you were going to penalise one of them, and I think I made that point in the Discord while we're following along, like, if Lewis gets penalised for that, then Charles could be facing 7 to 10 years
Mate,
in jail
I had to withdraw my comment
there.
because when you wrote that, I wrote underneath it, none from 2, champ. But I thought I'll pull that out. The thing that gets me is when you watch Oscar's onboard, you can see Charles looking in his left-hand mirror. Like, he fully knows that car is there. It's not like it came as a surprise to him. And you can see him starting to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. And then at the last minute, just really hustles back onto the ideal racing line for the braking zone. So again, if I was the chief steward, I would have called them both play on. I would have said, yeah, it's a bit rude, but, it probably is true that Oscar wasn't quite going to execute something. Again, I do subscribe to the theory that when you're on the outside, you're taking on an element of risk, but I could see that in the onboard from Oscar, that Charles knew he was there and he knew exactly what he was doing. And I guess in the context of the fact that we'd already seen
Well, I don't know if the penalty had already been dished out to Lewis at that point, but you think, well, if that's going to be penalised, then surely this is going to be penalised. So, yeah, but to me, they were both kind of play on, and the second one was a bit of a like, yeah, that was a bit cheeky, but all right, you can get away with this one. So, yeah, very strange.
Is that because it was still in single digits as far as laps is concerned, and the AVL rule?
Nothing to do with what the lap count was. It was rude. It was a rude move. There's no doubt about that. Whether it was worthy of a penalty or not is another thing. But again, if the standard is that any contact is going to be penalised, then penalise the contact.
What was it that flew off his car? Because at one stage I thought, oh, that's half a wing. And then I'm looking at the wing going, this is like iRacing. The wing's back again. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But
I'm not 100% sure. And obviously whatever they did at the stop mitigated the issues that it was having fairly well. They must have just cranked some more front wing angle into it, or maybe just the change of tyre compound helped or whatever. But it did look very dramatic at the time. And, geez, he did lose a lot of speed. Like, the fact that he fell back into Lando's clutches sort of says everything. But ultimately, there was points in the second stint where it looked like he might overhaul Max and end up on the podium. And I would have loved to have seen him and Charles in the cool down room together after the race. That would have been great. That was my primary thing for hoping that he did end up on the podium, was exactly for that. But anyway, that was it. That was the Belgian Grand Prix.
I don't know whether you've made note or noticed, but I reckon the TV direction from the last two Grand Prix has been pretty ordinary. They've missed things, they've highlighted things and never showed replays that were... I don't know what's doing. Even Crofty was getting the shits with the director at one point yesterday and, of course, last week as well.
Yeah.
It just seems like the left side's not talking to the right side or something, because it's been pretty abysmal to my mind. Yeah,
it's interesting. I do wonder what the kind of presentation of these regulations, the pressure that's putting on the TV direction in terms of like, how do we best ensure that this kind of, that we are not highlighting the issues, if that makes sense. I really did, I was doing live updates for the website over the weekend as well, and it really felt like through practice and qualifying, like we weren't getting a lot of onboards at the end of the Kemmel Straight there, where the cars would suddenly be losing power and all that sort of stuff. So it does feel like there's been a decision to kind of try and limit the damage in terms of the optics of the regulations. So, look, that's just me thinking out loud. It may not be a factor, may not be something that comes up in a pre-production meeting or whatever, but that was certainly the sort of feeling I get. And perhaps there's just a bit of pressure to kind of do that's creeping into some mistakes in the direction.
Anyway, let's go to the shift cut, because we're going to cover off on more news that you spoke about last week. 4, 3, 1. And as I said, I know you covered off on this topic with Yoko Ono last week on the podcast, but I think it's worthy of discussion here, AVL, because a lot of people have messaged me about this on Instagram especially. Supercars and its teams are thrashing out a deal that will shape the size of the championship's calendar in 2027 and beyond. Supercars management actively wants to expand the calendar with targets like bringing back Phillip Island to fill the scheduling void left by MotoGP. However, adding rounds costs teams significantly more in transport, components and staff wages. Teams are refusing to agree to any extra events beyond the 12-round minimum unless they receive a massive financial bump per round to offset the costs. Altering the calendar requires intense structural consensus. A temporary one-year amendment to adjust the schedule requires 75% special majority vote. Implementing a completely overhauled permanent TRC that protects a larger calendar requires 100% unanimous agreement. While both sides openly acknowledge that a 12-round calendar is undesirable, as large gaps between race weekends hurts media coverage, sponsor retention and fan engagement, the teams are using the threat of a strict 12-round minimum as leverage. Unless a financial compromise is reached, the championship will stay locked at its legal bare minimum to prevent teams from absorbing uncompensated operational losses. I'll let you have the floor, because I want to come back to you with other sports.
Look, I think we need to really treat the 12-round threat as a very real one. It does exist, but hopefully not a likely outcome, because as you flagged there, both the sport and the teams are actually on the same page about how that is a terrible outcome and would be damaging to the sport. But it's just all about, again, finding those the financial middle ground on it. We know that the existing TRC, the requirements for the events above the 12 in terms of financial compensation to the teams is just too high for the category to absorb. So something has to change. We need to find that compromise that's been found over the past 2 years as we've sort of grown to 13 and then 14. But this is about creating a more permanent, future-based TRC requirement about that expansion. I think, like, part of me says there's no way this can happen, but we can't quite think like that. It is possible we end up at the 12, but I really hope that this is one of those cases where common sense does prevail, that everyone can come together and let's build the tide that floats all the boats and do what's best for absolutely everybody here and get to where we need to get to. So it's really early days in this. It really only started around Townsville. So it's going to be very interesting, but yeah, it's certainly, it's concerning, and it will be until it's not concerning, until we do hopefully get to a point where we've reached the right compromise that everyone feels they can win from, and we can actually start building and expanding and doing the thing that we all want to do, and that's, trying to get back to being hot on the heels of the football codes as the third biggest sport in the country.
From my perspective, as one, a fan of the sport, but two, also a rugby league fan, can I just say that I think sports work best under a dictatorship? And in rugby league right now, they've got one of the greatest dictators in Peter V'landys, who's just signed a $5.5 billion TV deal, right? And he basically says what's going to happen, and it happens. He doesn't ask the teams. He doesn't ask for permission. And when he does, it's bullied beyond belief. Now, some people will say, oh, that's not fair and that's not right. But I'll tell you something now, it gets results. And the last bloke I remember who was a dictator in this sport was Tony Cochrane. And he also got results. And I feel like if Barclay needs to sort of almost take that persona on, to my mind, and just say, this is what we're doing. And I know we've got all these rules and we've got votes and everything else, but for the love of God, for the love of the sport and for the love of the fan, it has to be at least 14 rounds AVL. And to me, to my mind, 14 isn't enough either, just by the way. I think that's still well short of where the competition should be, the calendar should be. So I honestly don't think that if the sport goes to 12, I actually think it could be the need for a revolution if that happens.
Yeah, the problem is, like, you're 100% right, except for the fact that it's an oversimplification of what's possible. It's actually a real shame because we went away from this ownership model where the teams were owners of the sport. We went to this TRC model that gave the power back to the sport, except for the fact we ended up with a document that, at least in this area, in terms of the expansion of the calendar, they're powerless because it just gives too much power to the teams in terms of what they're actually contractually entitled to earn. So it's a nice idea that Barclay walks into the room and says, this is what we're doing and you have no say in it. But all these teams have signed contracts that say something different. So it's just not that easy. It's unfortunately something that has to be dealt with through negotiation because of the fact the TRC document is just a handbrake on the sport. And I'm pretty sure that's a phrase that Stefan Bartholomeus used in the news pod when we talked about it. It's just a handbrake on the sport. It is stopping the sport from expanding. So it's a lovely idea that Barclay just says, no, this is it. If you can afford to do it, you can. If you can't, bugger off. We'll get someone else to do it. This is how it's going to work. But the contracts just don't allow it. It's legally not allowed to be that way. So, and obviously once the teams have that power, they're not going to relinquish it all. So the best bet we have of expansion is negotiation. And, the plan, it's a pretty sensible plan, like 14 again next year and then 15 in 2028. Like, we're not talking about some sort of wild, outlandish plan from the supercars end. That's pretty realistic. So I think we can be optimistic that the right solution will be found. But, unfortunately, without I don't know what sort of revolution would have to take place for there to be a fresh start where it's just, well, here's the calendar and you can either afford to come racing or you can't. It's a lovely idea. I love that idea as well. The idea of like, well, this is how many times we're going racing. It wasn't that long ago we were doing 16, 17, 18 rounds a year. Like it's, but that is just, the way that the laws of the sport are written, it's just impossible to wield that much power in that kind of, in that sort of benevolent way. You just can't do that. There has to be a joint path forward.
I mean, in this most recent rugby league deal, Volandis actually said to them, we'll get to 20 teams. He didn't go and ask the teams, are you cool with that? He didn't seek anyone's permission. Yeah. He just said, we'll get to 20 teams. And now that is already been organised. It'll be another New Zealand team. These sort of things, so that gives you more games, obviously, per round, and gives you more footy, which means more games on TV, more ads, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
But these things are done because this bloke is just a goer and just a doer. And I know, like you say, the way it's structured doesn't mean it can't happen.
It's a way the laws are written. Like
someone needs to fix that.
Anyone would do that if they could, but they can't. And fixing it's not that easy. If teams have signed up to a contract and they own one of these TRCs and the TRC has a bunch of terms and conditions in it, it's not that. Like, obviously the football codes just have never fallen into the trap that Supercars has kind of found itself in with this. So that is how sport functions best. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just not as easy as just a click of the fingers and Barclay just becoming this, this ruler that just says this is what it is and like it or lump it. It's just it's impossible. It's legally impossible.
Well, they're at risk. They're at massive risk.
Yeah, totally.
To be fair. All right. SRO Motorsports Australia has confirmed that Cameron Vanden Duggan, I got excited when I seen the van. I thought, hello, old mate's got a new gig. As the replacement for Richie Craill for the upcoming Shannon Speed Series events, Vanden Duggan, Speed Series regular, will step in for the next 2 rounds of the calendar in Darwin and Sydney, while there's been no confirmation of the final round in Sandown. He's not the only new face to join the broadcast team this season, with real estate agent and Bathurst 1000 winner Lee Holdsworth joining the coverage in place of Nick Percat, who will be unavailable in Darwin. Holdsworth will provide expert commentary from the driver's perspective, expected to fill Percat's regular slots for GT World Challenge and Monochrome GT4 Australia. I think this is good. Good, and I like Lee coming back too, because I think he was one of the first podcasts I used to listen to, a motorsport podcast, and I thought he actually was a very good voice of reason.
Yeah, no, he articulates himself very, very well, and he is incredibly knowledgeable, Lee. So he's always a valuable addition to something like that. And Cam Vanden Duggan, he's been around for a very long time. He's a very accomplished broadcaster. He's not maybe not super well known, to everyone out there, but when they hear his voice, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy," and he's done plenty on that in that Speed Series kind of realm. So that's a nice opportunity for him, and obviously all of this is just a bit of an inevitability with Richard getting the call up to the big gig. This is the sort of stuff that has to fall by the wayside so he can bed himself in as the new voice of supercars.
TCR Australia vehicles will be given yet another lifeline, Jesus Christ, to continue racing via the Bend Motorsport Park in South Australia. AVL, is TCR Australia like the Australian motorsport version of Weekend at Bernie's? I mean, they've just propped the arm up and waving every now and then with this thing. In a new agreement with Motorsport Australia, the Bend Motorsport Park's Apex League will return to the governing body for its remaining 3 rounds. TCR cars are being invited to attend alongside Lamborghini Super Trofeo, ex-Porsche Carrera Cup, Ferrari World Challenge and Mark I vehicles as part of the Apex Cup class. Finally, fans will be given the opportunity to answer the age-old question, what wins between an i30 and a Lamborghini?
Yeah, no, I can't wait to see it. Bring it on.
Kiwis and Aussies overseas in the IndyCar, well, it's been It's been postponed until tomorrow because of rain. But in qualifying, Scotty McLaughlin was third, Scotty Dixon was fifth, Marcus Armstrong was eighth, and Will Power was 14th. But as I said, rain sort of cancelled any chances of a race today. In NASCAR, Shane Van Gisbergen started from 19th and worked his way forward to finish third in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at North Wilkesboro. And then SVG was rewarded for his recent form with 8th on the grid for the Girl Scout Hash Cookie 400 at North Wilkesboro as well. In the race, SVG had his strongest oval showing on the NASCAR Cup Series scheduled to date, bagging Sage points on his way to 5th in a race won by Joey Logano. And finally in US Trans Am2, TA2, Nathan Hearn headed over to Watkins Glen on the weekend for two 75-minute races. There were no pit stops in those races. He qualified a respectable 6th, and then in race 1 finished in 3rd position on the podium. And in the second race, he started from 5th, but had a DNF after he got to the lead and looked comfortable before a loose wheel meant he had to pit from the lead under safety car. He went back out, but the same fate. A few laps later on the same wheel put him as a DNF. But I think he made a little bit of a splash over there. And finally, in the Belgium Formula 3 at Spa, James Wharton, 27th in the sprint, Louis Sharp 13th. And in the Grand Prix, Wharton finished 18th and Louis Sharp 17th. So nothing to write home about there. We'll go to a super cheap auto anti-ad, and then we'll come back with Ask Us Anything. Back in a minute. G'day, Super Cheap Autos, Dodgest employee, former legend here, and I'm back with some incredible post-Townsville or Toowoomba, whatever, supercar round specials for you at Australia's leading auto spares, parts and accessories retailer. Need your streets cleaned? Then swing by Supercheap and buy these Ford Mustang Clean Sweep Kits. Perfect for picking up rubbish and kicking shit to the gutter. These Clean Sweep Kits will not only get your avenue looking schmick, but you'll have your competitors screaming for parity, and they're just $300 each. Do you need to make a hole for your teammate to swing on by? Then come and get one of these Thomas Randall blinker kits. Just switch these babies on and tell your teammate to come on through and pick up some extra points at your expense. And they're just $98 installed and come with a bonus shit sandwich. Are you trying to count some semi-big numbers and it doesn't matter if the number's a bit bigger than reality? Then come in and grab this Townsville Abacus. Perfect for having a guess at a big number and always goes a little bit bigger than reality. These babies are just great for impressing your friends by how many people attended your party, and they're just $250 each, or cheaper if you can get a government grant to kick a few dollars in. Are you sick of scraping the gutter with your new rims? Or do you struggle to reverse park in the supermarket car park? Then come by and grab these Brody Kostecki visual alignment guides. These babies come in a pair and stick to the side of your car, so when you're about to back into a wall, they scrape first and then alarm you to tell you that you're getting too close, and they're just $18 a pair. Are you sick of sweating your ass off while your supercar team struggles in the humidity to pull a result? Or you just want people in the tropics of Australia to understand why you've got grade 4 chafe and mechanics doing engine changes looking like a boiling kettle? Swing by and grab one of these I Love Albury t-shirts. These beauties will leave no one guessing that you love cold winds and frosts, and they're just $18 each. Are you an old bull that's being outshone in the paddock by a new buck? Are you having people starting to doubt that you're as good as you told everyone you are? Then come in and grab one of these I Still Believe in the Hall monitor bumper stickers. These unnecessarily long stickers go from blinker to blinker on your car and will have you showing your support for one of the biggest snitches in world motorsport. And they're just $45 each, or $5 for two. Come and get them while you can. Get down to Super Cheap Auto now for these Townsville, Toowoomba, Tewantin, Tamworth, Traralgon specials, I don't know, before they walk out the door, and I'll see you in a few weeks for some more Perth supercar specials. All right, AVL, it's the age-old podcast segment when you just run out of ideas. It's Ask Us Anything. And as part of being a member of the Discord, you have the opportunity to ask us anything. And there are actually some very intelligent questions amongst this, which goes against the grain of who we deal with in that place, as you were saying off air. Now, this one comes from Mike Cruz. He said, why are some drivers protected from accountability? Tom Randall's record against Waters is very poor and he still regularly goes backwards in the races, but we're talking about Fraser and Gray not getting a second year, although probably rightfully so, less so for Gray, he says. Lance Stroll is regularly spoken about, but Macaulay Jones is not, and they've both only got their drives because of their dad's influence. To think that Fraser or Gray won't be in the field, but Jones will be, is ridiculous. He said, I get it isn't Formula One, but every round F1 drivers are rated against their teammate and field. I'd love to see how you do a 1 to 25 ranking every round. It would expose a few, I reckon. How many rounds/years has it been since Reynolds beat his teammate on on speed across a weekend? He said, I'm sure they're all great guys, but so are the 10 other drivers waiting for a gig. And ultimately, it's meant to be a professional sport. Wow. We just we scorched the earth on that one. So where do you want to start?
I do. So I've got a few points on this. One, I mean, you do certainly have to look at the people's place in the sport more holistically than just their results compared to their teammate, for example. We understand there's commercial realities to running a race car. You look at someone like Tom Randall, who is an exceptional race car driver. Yes, Cam Waters is the clear team leader at Tickford. I don't think there's any great secret there, but Tom performs well and he's well backed by Castrol and is a pretty good option to have in that seat, in that team. And they create quite a harmonious sort of team environment, even though there's been a bit of friction as of late. So on the whole, that kind of works. The same goes for Macca. At the end of the day, you need to fund the car and he does a lot of work in terms of ensuring that the money's there to do that. It's certainly not quite as clear cut as a Lance Stroll sort of situation. But then you look at Lance Stroll, who actually has a lot of runs on the board before he got to F1. Obviously, he makes his disinterest in actually being an F1 driver fairly clear, which is what I think sort of creates the discomfort around the fact that he's on the grid just because his dad owns a team in that case. But I don't know you can really put Macca in that same category there. You look at Reynolds, ultimately, so if you want to take him out of that seat right now, who do you put in it? Who do you put in it that's going to
This is the question I was about to ask.
Snowy Rivers. Who do you put in it that's going to perform so much better than David Reynolds and is going to be as good at doing the hard yards with the primary backer of that car than David Reynolds? I just don't see that. So, and I guess that is one of the things at the moment, and I think we'll get onto this a little bit later as well, but if you look at the supercars field at the moment, there are drivers that aren't necessarily performing, and I think we've seen from Roland Dane's comments that he clearly feels Declan Fraser isn't, and the results support that. Rylan Gray has had it tough up against Brodie Kostecki, and probably hasn't moved things along as far as the team will never admit this, and they're very, very quick to point out that they're ecstatic about Rylan's progress, but I would think behind closed doors, there'd be times when they're like, geez, we'd like to see a little bit more here. But I don't know that that those guys are necessarily blocking the pathway for a bunch of other guys that would come in and go a heap faster right now. It's not to say there's not a heap of good talent out there, but just as we sit here right now, I don't know that I sit there and go, well, here's a list of drivers that would be doing a way better job in those seats. So that's my sort of take on all of the points that have been pointed out by Mike there. I do think that there is a general accountability issue from drivers in motorsport in general, and I think it's because of their very unique factor of there being a race car involved in terms of their athletic performance. And this is something that I've spoken about before, and I just find even the best team sport players, ball sport players, golfers, tennis players, even in individual sports, they just have ups and downs in their forms. It happens to every athlete in the world, but you very rarely hear a driver go, "Oh, I just had a bad weekend, man. I just didn't get it done this weekend," because they don't have to, because they can just say, because even their team might have all the data in front of them, but they're the only person in the car, so they come back and say, "Well, don't worry about that. I'm telling you, the car wasn't doing what I needed it to do." There's just, you very rarely hear, and I can never fully believe that racing car drivers are the only, not only athletes, the only human beings on the face of the planet that just never have a bad weekend. They never do anything wrong. It's always just whether the car works for them or it doesn't, and it's as simple as that. So yeah, I sort of feel like I'm pouring cold water over a lot of what Mike's saying there, but I do actually think there is a general accountability issue, because I refuse to believe that there's one strain of professional athlete in the whole world that performs completely consistently day in, day out. because even the best footy players have a bad weekend and have 7 shots on goal and kick 1 goal 6. It happens. It happens to everyone else, so I don't get why it doesn't happen to them.
Yeah. I'll go back from the very start. I think Randall's biggest problem is there's no W's in the column there, and that puts a lot of pressure on him. I think if he had maybe 2 or 3 wins, there would be a lot less sort of a spotlight on him, because the reality is too, AVL, and I'm the first one to have a crack at Tom, but he is in the top 10, almost concreted into the top 10 in an overall perspective. So
one win could change all of that so quickly as well. And I've always had that theory about Tom too, that there could be a floodgates scenario there if he just gets one off the square.
Yeah. I will talk about Fraser a little bit later in the show, and so, same with Ryland Gray. I think he's shown enough that you think, well, just hang in there, because I remember when Woody, look, different levels, but Woody's first year, I know there was a couple of blokes, including a couple of my mates, who were saying, get rid of him, he's no good. But I tell you what, I'd bet you no one's saying that right now. I reckon almost every team would sign him in a heartbeat with the opportunity. So that sort of thing, I think it can be sort of recency bias that makes people think that. But Lance Stroll is a special human being almost, but he's a special case in this point, because his dad is a multi-millionaire and he's racing in the highest profile motorsport series in the world. And no doubt about it, if it wasn't for his dad, he probably would be gone by now. In fact, you said that he was okay in the juniors, but if you have a look at the history of that, there are some clouds around some of those results as well about basically buying results. But back to Macaulay, again, I think there's just not enough good results to keep the wolves from the door. But I actually understand why people have a white-hot crack at him. But like you say, at the moment, we get further down into Mike's question. He says they're all great guys, but so are 10 other drivers waiting for a gig. I don't know that there are 10 other drivers right now, AVL.
Not right now. Not to come in and do a better job than Macaulay would in that seat, or Declan would in that seat. And again, I'd say we'll get onto this a bit later. But yeah, it's not that clear cut. I don't know that they're the bottle stops that you could kind of think that they are in the whole show at the moment.
G-Train asked us, what is your favourite motorsport memory or moment? I've got 2.
I struggle to go past Murph's Lap of the Gods as just one of the most enthralling bits of motorsport TV that I've ever watched.
Was there that day?
In my whole life. I wasn't there, but I was watching it, and that is something that I just, that's a tough one. That and some of the early days of Rally Australia in WA, sort of things that I've seen with my own eyes. But Lap of the Gods is, if I had to pick one, it'll always be that.
Yeah. All the ones I was just thinking about while you were talking then, I was like, well, that's not actually my favourite, and they're not very positive. But my favourite probably motorsport memory, and I won't be too specific but watching a bloke that I had a little bit to do with win a national title at Phillip Island one day, knowing how hard he'd struggled to get to that point, and for him to win the title was a really, really great moment. So probably that for me. Billy Bob says, where did you both get your passion for motorsport, and what's Former's real first name?
I'll let you answer the second part of that, although I'm not sure that you're going to. I just grew up in motorsport, to be honest. My dad's been involved in it since before I was born. My uncle was the operations manager for Rally Australia in Perth and is still the media manager for the Australian Grand Prix, and has been since the Adelaide days, the very early Adelaide days. So I really grew up in the sport, and I was fairly given all of that. It was all very normal to me and not overly exciting for quite a while, and I was probably more focused on things like agriculture and stuff as a kid, and then at some point went, hang on, these racing cars are actually pretty cool. I might try driving one, and then kind of build a whole career about it. So, that's where my passion comes from. It's just a passion of my entire family.
Yeah, I got dragged along to car racing from the time I was knee-high to a grasshopper by one of my favourite human beings on the earth. my uncle, and then it just never left me from there. So I remember going to Oran Park in the mid-'80s. So that was probably where my passion began. And thanks for your question, Billy Bob, about my first real name. Ironically, it's Billy Bob. So there you go. What a coincidence. Shednanigans says, if you could build a permanent circuit, where would you build it and what kind of track design features would you include? We're actually going to do this earlier this year. We might revisit it at some stage later on in the year. But where would you build it, AVL?
Well, selfishly, there's been a lot of talk over the last few years about a new circuit being built around Serpentine in Western Australia, and that's definitely where I'd pick to have it, because we'd be shipping out of Wanneroo and the garage there pretty quickly if there was a track 5 minutes from the workshop, the other workshop that we've got. So that'd work for me. I don't really care what the track facilities are or what the features are, because that'd be pretty handy, not 90 minutes drive away. So yeah, I'll go with that.
I'd probably find a flat piece of unused land out the back of Murray Bridge somewhere and just build a track out there.
Oh, good idea.
Just would bring the people, like Field of Dreams.
Yeah. Can you make sure there's a heap of accommodation at the circuit, that it gets booked out really quickly, and
Look,
everything
I'm not
else
lie.
is about 40 or 50 minutes away?
As a circuit owner, that's not really my priority, to be honest.
No,
so I can't promise you that. Look, anywhere there's a hill, anything that's got hills and undulations for me. After that, we can work with pretty much anything from there. Jared Maddo, 27, says, if there was a Supercars World Championship, what would your ideal calendar be?
Oh, I think
let's just do 12 rounds, because that's apparently all we can do.
That takes a bit more discussion. Maybe we should park that for another discussion as well, because that sounds like that needs a bit of thought going into where we should go racing. That's actually a really great question, but I reckon that could be a segment at some point.
We'll revisit that. G-Train asked us again, this may have come up before, but what were your first cars? AVL. What was yours? It was a BMW M3 or something, wasn't it?
No. My first car was a KF Ford Laser S, the 1.8 litre Laser. That was my first car.
Yeah. Mine was an XD Falcon, and it was the perfect car if you loved hanging out in petrol stations. It was the thirstiest thing known to man. So it was the cast iron head. So fuel efficiency wasn't high on the list of priorities at Ford at that stage, from what I can tell. So that was, and it taught me a lot about the way cars work, because forever I had to build. I bought the remember the manuals you used to be able to buy in like Supercheap and places.
Oh, like that? I know exactly what you. The Haynes manuals.
The Haynes ones. Yeah, mine was covered in oil and grease, and there was fingerprints all over it and everything. But
those were the days, but right? How good was it when you could do all that sort of stuff? How cool.
Yeah. And now you open the thing and go, nah.
Well, you just need to have an OBD reader and just scan the code and then look that up on ChatGPT and then just work out what you got to fix from there.
Right, Ash asks us, if every engineer disappeared after qualifying and the drivers had to race with no strategy, no fuel targets, no tyre advice and no radio coaching, who wins in supercars? Would the result be completely different, or have we overestimated how much engineers influence modern racing? These days, every breaking point, it doesn't matter, but he talks about how important things are around that.
I do. I love this question, and I think I've been thinking about this ever since it did pop up in the Discord a couple of days ago. I think this would suit two very distinct style of drivers. And one is your Brody Kostecki style engineer driver.
First bloke that come to my mind.
Who just knows all that stuff. Doesn't actually need to be told what's going on. Can feel the tyre, can feel what the shocks and springs are doing, the way the car's rolling, and what they need to do. So I think that if you ban that radio communication and all that engineering tomorrow, someone like Brody would flourish. And then I think you'd go to the other end of the scale, which is just your real seat of the pants style drivers. And I'm sort of thinking, I think Craig Lowndes was a classic for that.
Yeah,
probably modern. I don't know. I don't want to disparage anyone for their technical understanding or the hard work they put into that sort of stuff. But I always feel like someone like a Cam Waters is just let's just pick this thing up and drive it as fast as it goes sort of driver. So I think you'd have this kind of ends of the spectrum there that it would really suit. And then you've got this kind of other class of driver who are amazing at, basically having a map put in front of them about here's what this car can do. Like if you brake here and turn here and get the throttle on here, this will work, and they execute it really well. And again, I don't mean that as saying that that's a poor trait of theirs. It's actually a really important trait for a modern race car driver. But I do think there's this kind of middle class of driver that would struggle without that direction in terms of how to go about it. And then you'd have the guys with massive engineering nous and the guys with just excellent seat of their pants feel that would flourish without it.
Yeah, I think for me, the first name that came to my mind was Brody. I just think, like you say, he has that sort of, it seems like that's the way his mind ticks anyway. So I think he could just
he could get out of the car at the end of the session, open the toolbox and just do what he needs to do to the car before the next session without talking to anyone, and then go out there and the car would be better for it. Like that's the level of technical understanding that he has.
Yeah, and he, on the other hand, can steer. So
exactly.
I think he has that whole seat of the pants thing as well. So for me,
correct.
That's where I would be pointing first up to head that way. Frosport asks, what's going on with the AASA situation?
Well, it's potentially a legal scenario or not, depending again on who you are. So it's a really tough thing to really do any sort of deep dive on, particularly without being on the inside of it. But, effectively, there are some people at the Benalla Auto Club who don't feel that they were fully across the fact that they were relinquishing their ownership stake in AASA, and there are people involved in the new look ownership of AASA that feel that it was very transparent and that they shouldn't feel that way. So that's it. They're the two sides of the story, and it's absolutely impossible at this point, unless you're deeply embedded in it, to fully know what's going on. And again, in case it does become a more complicated legal issue, it's pretty hard to say too much.
And G-Train says, finally, and I've got a long-winded answer for this, if you could pick any race event to go to around the world, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that is a really good question.
I'll give you mine, and it's probably the worst answer because it's actually an answer in 4. I would go to Europe, begin at the the Le Mans, do the Spa, go to Goodwood, and then come back to Spa for the F1s. In the space of a month.
I mean, Monaco would be good to go to. If you're listening, Ryan Walkinshaw, just let me know.
You reckon?
There's a spot on the yacht next year. I'll be pretty good. You don't reckon it'd be good? Sitting on the yacht?
Yeah, but I don't think it's for the racing. If I'm going there for a car head, no. If I'm going there for everything else, absolutely. First bloke through the door.
Yeah, I think I'm just going the boring answer there. Going with that one.
Yeah. All right, we'll go to a break and we'll come back with Rear of Grid.
Full credit to the noise.
Winter could spell bad news for your vehicle's battery. Here are 3 maintenance tips from the battery gurus at R&J Batteries. 1. Avoid frequent short trips to keep your battery at a healthy state of charge. 2. Keep the battery terminals clean and corrosion-free. 3. Avoid running your accessories with the engine off for too long. If your battery is 3 years or older, it might be time to get it tested for free at your local R&J Batteries. R&J Batteries. Power like nothing else.
Yeah, welcome back. Now, as we said, AVL, very busy in the Discord. And people were saying, there was a few new members in last night who were saying, mate, how good's this? Talking about Formula Ones with other dudes about Formula Ones while Formula Ones are running on my TV. It's just a good place to be, I reckon, in that sort of race weekend. I know we keep saying it. I know it probably sounds boring to if you're not there, but it's just a bunch of like-minded people. And then even on the nights where there wasn't much doing, blokes just start talking about, their first cars or their dream cars or, I think we did something the other night. What's $100,000 buy that's going to turn heads on Bondi Beach on a Friday night?
Yeah.
Things like that.
I got to tell you, during the race last night, I was kind of I was switching between the tabs of the live updates for Speed Cafe and the unofficial live updates in the Discord, and there was a couple of times where I was like, "Man, I wouldn't want to get these ones mixed up because
that is a matter of time." I was thinking that the other night.
Because the tone is a little different. Let's put it that way. It's slightly different, and it would be really easy to pump something into the Speed Cafe live updates that potentially wouldn't shouldn't be for public consumption. Should be for Discord consumption. So if that gives you a little bit of a hint of the fun we have in there, then yeah, get involved.
If you are watching the live F1 updates and you see a meme pop up from maybe The Hangover or something, you can assure that AVL's doing the updates and he's probably put it in the wrong chat. So,
yeah.
All right, if you want to do that, fcttn.com, join up there, follow the links, and join in the fun. 6 credit or shred it. So I'm going to make a statement. You follow up with a credit or a shred it. We'll come back after we've done all 6. Number 1, Declan Fraser will hold his seat at Premier because there are no other suitable candidates out there right now.
Shred it.
Credit. Number 2, supercar teams should be politely inquiring about Jack Doohan's availability for Enduros in 2027.
Ooh. I'll go shred it.
I'll say credit. Number 3, Ryan Wood should request that his radio not be made available for social media on the supercars accounts. Townsville made him look like a gold medalist.
Shred it. You can't shred it. You can't do that.
Number 4. I tell you what, I bet you he listened to that thing with horrified ears. Number 4, F1 regulations have turned one of the greatest racetracks into a meme.
Credit.
Credit.
Got to put a credit
Number
out
5,
there, I suppose.
George Russell won't run in the top 2 for the title this year.
Ooh. I'll go with shred it.
Yeah, I'll go shred it as well. Number 6, Kimi Antonelli started to show his potential ever since former legend tipped him for pole at last year's Monaco. It's hard not to think that he is somewhat responsible for Kimi's domination this year.
That's a hard shred it.
Credit. I know what you're saying. Declan will hold his seat at Premier. I gather we're talking about in the next year.
Yeah, I say shred it because I think it's I actually do think there is something to that theory. I do feel that a lack of really obvious options could be helpful for Declan in terms of his short-term future at Premier, but I think it will come down to more than that. Like, I think he has to show something to keep Roland and Pete Zibris and that team interested in keeping him in the seat. And if he doesn't, I think they will look at whatever other options are out there. So I gave it a shred it because I don't think that's all it will come down to. I do think that's a factor that is on Declan's side to some extent and should be something that he should use as, if nothing else, just a bit of a confidence base to go, right, like, I feel like I can be better than the other options that are out there. So, like, let's go do that. Let's go be better than that and prove that. And that's ultimately what he needs to do in the second half of this season.
Yeah. I said shred it. I said credit because we will come back to this. Maybe we'll do this next week along with the best races on the International Supercars Championship. But I don't reckon there's much out there. But I've heard one name that might be attached to that seat, but I won't say anything just yet. Supercars teams politely inquiring about Jack Doohan's availability. I said credit only because, 1, it's a cheap headline, and 2, if he does come over, I tell you what, you won't be struggling for sponsors.
Yeah, I just feel like these career open-wheel drivers that come out of karting, left-foot braking, go into junior international single-seaters, left-foot braking, I lack trust that they can get in a supercar and be really quick.
Okay. Ryan Wood should request that his radio not be made to social media.
Actually, I should have said credit here because he should definitely request that, and I'm pretty sure he has. But it should be denied because at the end of the day, he's the one in charge of pressing the radio button and saying what he says into the radio. And as easy as it is to pile on and be like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? That's Ryan Wood, and that's why we love him. And we've had this conversation on this pod. I've had this conversation on the news pod with Stefan as well. Like, never change, mate. Just be who you are. Like, it's brilliant. So, but also being who you are is going to lead to some amazing content that the series
Supercars
has the
did him
absolute right to go to town on, and you've just got to live with it.
Supercars did him dirty, but because the last 50% of their entire clip was just Woody. It was like, Jesus.
Yeah.
No one else used their radio on Sunday, or what's doing here? Because they just stitched him up.
Well, there's a whole lot of Trucker System Mobile 1 that's kicking about on the
Yeah, it's a good call.
on the reel. So just live with the good.
F1 regs have turned Spa into a meme.
Yeah, I mean, as we discussed at the top of the show,
So sad.
It was what it was.
Yeah. George Russell won't run the top two. I said
He's only 5 behind Lewis, right?
Yeah.
I reckon they'll figure something out. Like
Sure.
I still feel like he will end up second in the championship, but I do think it's going to be tough to run down Kimi from here.
And I'm responsible for Kimi Antonelli showing speed since backing him for Monaco.
Yeah,
the old kiss of death.
This is one of the worst attempts at trying to salvage a terrible, terrible punting tip that I've ever seen. And I
was only 12
apologise
months
again to
ahead of
any
myself.
of the listeners that did follow that terrible, terrible tip that you tried to give everyone.
Mate, it's like when that beer truck overturned in Queensland. I feel like there were 75,000 people that had that bet. Every time I talk to someone, it's like, I took your tip, you idiot. It's like, not all of you could have taken that tip, surely. But anyway, stick around for more of those sorts of tips later on. Whisper of the week, AVL. You'll like this. Sainz to Audi, Lawson to Williams, ? Again.
Yeah, it's beyond my pay grade to know if that's a thing that could happen. But yeah. Actually, I felt sorry for Liam in the Spa Grand Prix last night because I thought he qualified really well, made a ripper start, didn't get the upgrade to that car, and just kind of fell away as the race went on. But I actually thought, it was one of the better 12th place finishes or whatever it was that you'll see.
To be fair, Lindblad was pretty good too, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that was his best ever F1 drive. So
yeah, but he also had a massive upgrade package that Liam didn't have. So
yeah, I get it.
I think Liam is smart and mature enough to go, yeah, all right, well, I'm going to have that come Hungaroring this weekend. So
it's a matter of time before those two come together, by the way.
Absolutely.
They weren't far off it last night.
Oh, yeah, they did have a moment. Yep.
Yeah,
you're right.
It is a
You're not
matter
wrong
of
about
time,
that.
man.
Agreed.
I don't think either of them know how to back out of anything.
No.
All right, that'll about do us for the episode of Full Credit the Noise. Don't forget you can find the show on all the socials at FCTTN Podcast, and you read AVL's excellent work at speakcafe.com, where they do break all the big motorsport news first. Until next time, I've been former Legend. He's been AVL. This has been Full Credit the Noise, and we'll see you in Hungary.
See you there.
Full credit to the noise.